You were never lazy. You just lost respect for yourself. And once that respect disappeared, everything else started falling apart. Not slowly, not quietly, but piece by piece. The version of yourself you once believed in began to fade. And you watched it happen. You watched yourself make promises you never kept. You watched yourself wake up late when you swore you'd rise early. You watched yourself say tomorrow, and then let tomorrow become next week, and next week become never. You watched all of it, and somewhere deep in that silence, you stopped believing your own words. That is not laziness. That is something far more painful than laziness. That is a person who has lost faith in themselves. A person who no longer trusts the voice inside their own mind. A person who has been betrayed, not by the world, not by circumstances, but by the one individual they could never escape, themselves. And that is where we begin. Most people will call it laziness. It's easier that way. Laziness is a simple word, a comfortable word, a word that carries no real weight, no real accountability. I'm just lazy. 3 words. And with 3 words, you can explain away every failure, every unfinished goal, every broken promise, every wasted day. 3 words, and suddenly you don't have to examine anything deeper. You don't have to ask the harder questions. You don't have to sit with the uncomfortable truth. But here is what no one ever tells you. Laziness is not a character trait. Laziness is a symptom. It is the visible surface of something buried far beneath it. Something most people never look at directly because looking at it hurts. The real problem is not that you don't want to work. The real problem is not that you don't have goals. You have goals. You've always had goals. You think about them when you can't sleep. You think about them when you're scrolling mindlessly at 2 in the morning, staring at other people's lives, wondering when your moment will come. The goals are there. The desire is there. So why aren't you moving toward them? Because somewhere along the way, you stopped respecting yourself. And when self-respect disappears, discipline disappears with it. Motivation disappears. Confidence disappears. The willingness to endure discomfort disappears. Everything that requires you to believe in yourself disappears. Because you cannot pour from an empty vessel. And self-respect is the vessel that holds everything. Now let me show you exactly how this happened. Because it didn't happen overnight. It never does. There was no single moment where everything collapsed. No single failure that broke you completely. No, it was slower than that. Far slower and far more insidious. It began with something small. A promise you made to yourself that you didn't keep. Maybe it was waking up early. Maybe it was going to the gym. Maybe it was starting that project, reading that book, finishing something you began with excitement and abandoned with silence. It was small. You told yourself it didn't matter. I'll do it tomorrow. One day doesn't change anything. And that was the first crack. Not a collapse, not a disaster, just a hairline fracture in the foundation of the relationship you have with yourself. So small you almost didn't notice it, but your mind noticed. Your mind always notices. Every time you make a promise to yourself, your mind is listening. Every time you keep that promise, your mind files it away as evidence. Evidence that you are someone who can be trusted. Evidence that you are someone who follows through. Evidence that you are someone worthy of belief. And every time you break that promise, your mind files that away too. 1 broken promise barely registers. 2 broken promises. The doubt begins to whisper. 10 broken promises, the whisper becomes a voice. 100 broken promises, and that voice becomes the loudest thing in the room. The voice that says, why bother starting? You won't finish anyway. The voice that says, you've tried before. Remember how that ended. The voice that says, you're not the kind of person who does this. You never were. And the most devastating part of all of this is that the voice is not lying to you. It is reciting your own history back to you. It is quoting your own actions, your own patterns, your own evidence. And because of that, you believe it. That is how self-respect dies. Not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds, thousands of tiny self-betrayals, each one barely visible on its own. Each one easy to rationalize, easy to excuse, easy to minimize, but stacked together, layered on top of each other over months, over years, they become a prison. A prison built entirely from your own hands. Think about the last 6 months of your life. Not the goals you had, not the things you told people you were going to do. Think about the private promises. The ones made in the quiet of your own mind, when it was just you and the version of yourself you wished you were. I'm going to wake up at 5 tomorrow. I'm going to stop eating badly this week. I'm going to work on my craft every single day. I'm going to stop wasting time. I'm going to be different. And then think about what actually happened. The alarm went off. You turned it off. You told yourself 10 more minutes. 10 minutes became 2 hours. The day was already behind before it started. And somewhere in that space between the promise and the action, something quiet happened. Something small. Something that left no visible mark, but left a mark nonetheless. You confirmed to yourself that you cannot be trusted. And then you did it again the next day. And the day after that. And every single time, the confirmation grew stronger. Every single time, the gap between who you said you were and who you were actually being grew wider. And you began to live in that gap. Suspended between the person you dreamed of becoming and the person your actions said you already were. Reach for the phone. Open the app. Scroll, watch, consume, disappear into someone else's life for a few minutes. And then a few minutes becomes an hour. And the hard thing is still there, waiting, unchanged. Except now there is slightly less time, and slightly less energy, and slightly more guilt. And the guilt, rather than motivating you, feeds directly into the same cycle. Because guilt without action does not produce change. Guilt without action only deepens shame. And shame is the heaviest weight a person can carry while trying to move forward. So you scroll more, because the phone numbs the shame. Temporarily, the way all numbing works, temporarily, and then the shame returns, heavier than before, and the cycle repeats. And the day ends, and you lie in the dark, thinking about who you wanted to be when this day started, and the distance between that person and where you actually are feels enormous, unbearable, and you make another promise. Tomorrow will be different. And tomorrow arrives. And nothing has changed. Because nothing in you has changed. Because you are still waiting to feel motivated. Still waiting for some external force to reach inside you and flip the switch. Still waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right version of yourself to appear. But here is the truth that changes everything. The truth that most motivational content will never say to you because it is not comfortable. It is not exciting. It does not trend. But it is the only truth that has ever actually rebuilt a broken person. You will never feel motivated enough to change. Not in the beginning. Not when the damage runs this deep. You will not wake up one morning suddenly filled with unshakable confidence and burning desire. You will not find a video that rewires your brain in 8 minutes. You will not read a quote that transforms years of self-betrayal into instant belief. That is not how human beings work. That is not how self-respect is rebuilt. Self-respect is earned. Slowly, quietly, through action. Only through action. Not through thinking about changing. Not through planning to change. Not through telling people you're going to change. through the small, unsexy, invisible act of doing what you said you would do, when you said you would do it, when no one is watching, when you don't feel like it, when every part of you is searching for a reason to stop. That is where self-respect is rebuilt. In that exact moment. In the space between the voice that says stop and the choice to continue anyway. And it does not begin with something enormous. Every version of this transformation that has ever lasted began with something small. So small it almost felt meaningless. A person waking up 5 minutes earlier than usual. Not an hour, 5 minutes. And getting up when the alarm sounds. Not negotiating, not bargaining. Just standing up. And in that standing up, that single act of honoring a promise made to no one but themselves, they send a message. A quiet message. To the only audience that matters. I did what I said I would do. That is all. No applause, no acknowledgement, no validation from anyone else. Just one kept promise. One small act of self-trust. And the next day, another. And the next day, another. And slowly, the way a foundation is built one stone at a time, something begins to shift. The mind starts to hear a different voice. Not loud, not sudden, but real. I woke up when I said I would. I trained when I didn't feel like it. I sat down and worked when I wanted to disappear. I did the thing. And each kept promise is added to a different pile. Not the pile of evidence against you, the pile of evidence for you. And slowly, that pile begins to grow. And slowly, you begin to believe something you had almost completely forgotten. That you are someone who can be trusted. Not by the world, not by others, by yourself. And that changes everything. Because once you begin to trust yourself, the relationship with discomfort begins to change. Discomfort is no longer a signal to stop. It becomes a signal that you are exactly where you need to be. That you are doing the thing that matters. That you are on the path of the person you are becoming, rather than the person you were. Discipline does not feel the way people say it feels. It does not feel powerful at first. It does not feel like confidence and fire and momentum. In the beginning, discipline feels like a quiet act of war against your own worst instincts. It feels like sitting down when you want to run. It feels like staying when you want to leave. It feels like choosing the harder path at the exact moment the easier path is right in front of you. It is not glamorous. It is not dramatic, but it is real, and it is the only mechanism through which a broken person becomes an unbreakable one. And here is what no one talks about. The moment after you have kept your promise. The moment you lie down at the end of a day where you actually did the things you said you would do. Where you woke up when you said you would. Moved your body when you said you would. Worked when you said you would. Chose discipline when comfort was pulling at you. The moment you close your eyes after a day like that and feel something you had almost forgotten existed. Respect for yourself. It is quiet. It is not euphoric. It does not scream, but it is there. A deep, solid, unshakable feeling that you are no longer betraying the person you are meant to be. That you are no longer the enemy of your own future. That you are becoming someone you recognize. Someone you can look at directly without flinching. That feeling is worth more than any applause you will ever receive from anyone else. Because it is earned. And only you know what it cost. Now I want you to see something. Two versions of the same person. The same mind. The same circumstances. The same beginning. The first version wakes up every morning already defeated. Before anything has happened, the defeat is already present. Because years of broken promises have trained the mind to expect nothing different. The alarm sounds. The negotiation begins immediately. 5 more minutes. 10. I'll start properly on Monday. Today is already ruined anyway. And the day begins in retreat. Every hour, an attempt to avoid rather than to build. Every discomfort immediately medicated by distraction. The day ends in the same way it always ends. Unfinished, unstarted, with the hollow feeling of potential that went nowhere. And a promise made in the dark. Tomorrow, this time I mean it. but it is the same promise. And the mind knows it, and the mind files it, and the cycle continues. The second version wakes up to the same alarm, feels the same pull towards sleep, has the same voice suggesting delay, but something has changed. Not dramatically, not completely, but there is a small pile of kept promises now. A week of waking up when the alarm sounded. 3 sessions of training when the mind begged for rest. 1 project started and actually worked on when everything else was calling. A small pile, but real, undeniable, and from that pile, a small voice speaks. You did it before, you can do it now. And so the feet hit the floor, not because it feels good, not because motivation is overflowing, but because there is a new identity beginning to form. An identity built from action, and that identity must be protected. It must be fed, because it is the most valuable thing this person has begun to build. 1 day, then 2, then a week, then a month, and one morning you will wake up, and the alarm will sound, and you will not negotiate. You will not bargain. You will not promise tomorrow. Because tomorrow already has a promise waiting, and you will get up. And you will feel something unfamiliar, something clean, something solid. The quiet knowledge that the person you are waking up as is closer to the person you were always meant to be. Not finished. Never finished. Growth does not end. The work does not end. But different. Real, moving alive in a way that cannot be manufactured by motivation, cannot be purchased by inspiration, cannot be given to you by anyone in this world. Because you built it. Promise by promise, morning by morning, discipline by discipline, in the silence, in the ordinary, in the unseen. And the world will one day see the result, but you will have always known the cost. And that knowledge, that private understanding of what it took, will make you unshakable in a way that nothing else ever could. Because everything you have, you earned. Because you know, at the deepest level, that you can trust yourself. That when the moment demands something from you, you will not flinch. You will not negotiate. You will not disappear. You will simply do what you have trained yourself to do. And that is the version of yourself you have been waiting for. Not the version that finally feels ready. The version that acts anyway. Not the version that runs out of doubt. The version that moves forward despite it. Not the version that never struggles. The version that has learned to meet struggle with something unbreakable. Self-respect. Earned, quiet, yours. You were never lazy. You were someone who lost faith in themselves. And now, that faith is coming back. Not because someone told you inspiring words, but because you are about to choose differently. Because you are about to get up tomorrow when it is hard. Work when it is thankless. Stay when every instinct says leave. Keep the promise when breaking it would be so much easier. And in that choice, repeated again and again in the silence of your own life, you will become someone the world recognizes as disciplined, as confident, as relentless. But you will know the real word for it. Respected by yourself. Finally, completely, and for the first time in a long time, deservingly, now comment, I respect myself again.